Racism is a strong ideology. It can be traced back as far as European colonization in the 14th century. The European settlers had a strong dislike of Native Americans. They took their land, resources, and dignity on numerous occasions. With any negative concept such as racism, there's always a movement to end it. Our movements came in the form of civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr., the famous Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education, or today's modern movement, Black Lives Matter. Because of these movements, people living in America believe we are a united nation. But because of xenophobia, stereotypes, and social media, this utopia is unattainable. Today in America, we only see how African Americans dealt with racism. We rarely see how racism affected other races in America. To add a different viewpoint on racism, we interviewed Ellen Thomas, a teacher who went to college in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, right after the Civil Rights Movement. We asked her how she dealt with the racism and her viewpoints on it.
At the time, I thought the segregation was acceptable because that was the norm in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where I lived, and among all the people I was with. Once I left there, I soon learned that it was not acceptable in any way, but it just took me getting out into the world other than there to realize.
Acceptable thing?
No, I didn't grow up in a environment that was like that. However, I did have a black lady who took care of me 2 or 3 days a week while Mom did whatever. And so we never looked down on her, and she was like a grandmother to me. But there was always a difference that was understood between Eva and myself. In fact, when my parents would be gone out of town, she would fix us dinner. She would never eat with us. She ate in the kitchen and put us somewhere else. And there was so much segregation. No African American students were allowed in my dorm, ever. When we would go to class, they weren't in any of our classes. You would walk down the sidewalk, and the few African American students that were there, they would stand off to the side into the street while we walked by, and then they would get back on the sidewalk and go on where they were going.
Were there specific rules that said that that's what they had to do?
No, it was just understood.
An unspoken rule?
Unspoken rule. Same as most of the buildings had 2 sets of women's restrooms, 2 sets of men, water fountains. There might be 2 sets, and one was unspoken for African Americans, one was for white. And even though the signs were gone, you knew which one to go to.
In America, we have had many groups that have tried to end racism. One very famous group of people are the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were a radical group with the hopes of helping ethnic minorities become equal in the eyes of society. One of their goals was to overthrow the U.S. government and protect African Americans in the process. The group was formed in California in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. The duo practiced militant self-defense. They set up the Free Breakfast for School Children program that offered food to over 10,000 kids every day. This group, however, oftentimes used violence to achieve their goals. In 1967, the police and the Panthers fired at each other, leaving many people from both sides dead. On April 6, 1968, police confronted the Panther Party and killed Bobby Sutton, a notable member of the Panther group. 4 police officers were injured and 1 left dead. We face the issue of equality in America every day. The most relevant example is the Civil Rights Movement. During this period of time, African Americans were discriminated against in ways unimaginable. Many public areas were segregated. This means the different races were put in different areas. There were segregated schools, bathrooms, and water fountains. The African Americans were not allowed to sit in certain places on public transportation. Hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan were prevalent in the South and were the cause of numerous casualties in the black community. The KKK bombed, shot, and killed a large amount of black rights activists. In the South, there were an estimated 6,000 to 10,000 KKK members in the late 1900s. Caucasians in the South did not want anyone to respect the blacks. The children were even influenced by racial stereotypes. Disney has had many influential movies, from Cinderella to Lion King, In the mid-1900s, however, Disney produced movies with derogatory racial undertones. One example is Fantasia, a famous movie starring Mickey Mouse. In one scene, a black creature is seen washing the feet of a beautiful white princess. Disney, however, was the least of the black community's worries. Police brutality during the Civil Rights Movement was very common. Due to the popularity of the KKK, many police officers were Klansmen. They beat and killed African American men and women. Oftentimes, the police officers would use lynching as a form of punishment. Lynching is a punishment that involves publicly executing an individual, which was usually done by hanging. During this time, Martin Luther King Jr., someone we all know, began to start an anti-violence movement. He saw the destruction racism was having on society. He drew national attention after giving his I Have a Dream speech. The speech was a very big moment in the Civil Rights Movement. Police brutality was very common in the later years of the 19th century and also today. On April 3, 1991, 4 Los Angeles police officers were videotaped beating Rodney King following a high-speed chase. After the video of the beating was leaked to the public, riots began to form in Los Angeles that left 55 people dead and 2,000 wounded. However, only 2 of the 4 police officers involved in the crime were indicted on charges of excessive force. Multiple black teens have been beaten, shot, and murdered in America today and since the Rodney King incident. One example, on August 9, 2014, Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer for stealing from a local convenience store. The police officer who shot Michael claimed to have been physically assaulted by Brown and that Brown took his gun from him. However, many credible witnesses state that Michael had his hands up, held and surrendered before being shot. Michael Brown was shot 6 times, 4 times in the arm and twice in the head. Were the contents from the convenience store worth the life of Michael Brown? The officer who took Michael's life was not indicted for any charges relating to the death of the teen. Following this decision, Ferguson, Missouri erupted into riots. As protesters charged barricades, hurling glass bottles, police responded with smoke and tear gas. Police militarization and riot squads were sent out to calm the riots. All of this happened because of one teenage boy. The question we should all be asking each other: have times really changed since the Civil Rights Movement? Sure, black people might be able to sit where they want or marry a white person, but today, are we all really equal? Black Lives Matter. This is something everyone has seen recently. Those words are plastered online and on the news. The Black Lives Matter movement is slowly getting bigger. It goes beyond killings and discrimination. Its main goal is to shed light on the struggles African Americans face every day in the world. This movement isn't limited to just African Americans. People from all races are a part of the revolution. People involved in the movement can get their word across through speeches, rallies, and protests. They notice the injustice in the world. They notice the inequality in the world, the inequality in America. We are not a united nation. We are a country split by races. The sooner Americans realize we aren't all unified, the sooner this injustice can stop. Now I ask you again, are we all really equal?